He took a life insurance millionaire and disappeared without explanation. 20 years later. The truth is shocking. Narrator, VO. What I'm about to tell you happened in the quiet suburbs of Denver, Colorado back in 2004. A story so bizarre, so completely unbelievable, that even 20 years later people still shake their heads in disbelief when they hear it. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I was there. I saw it all unfold. And today, for the first time, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to Margaret Chen and why her disappearance shocked an entire community. You see, folks, this isn't just another missing person case. This is about trust, betrayal, and a truth so shocking that when it finally came to light, it changed everything we thought we knew about human nature. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Margaret Chen wasn't just wealthy. She was set for life. At 42 years old, this insurance executive had built an empire selling life insurance policies to Denver's elite. Her agency, Rocky Mountain Life Solutions, was pulling in over $2 million annually. Margaret lived in a sprawling mansion in Cherry Hills Village, drove a pristine white Mercedes, and had recently purchased a vacation home in Aspen worth $1.8 million. But here's what made Margaret different from other successful businesswomen. She was genuinely beloved by everyone who knew her. Her neighbors describe her as the kind of person who'd shovel your driveway without being asked, who remembered your kids' birthdays, who always had a warm smile and a genuine interest in your well-being. Margaret had been married to her college sweetheart, David, for 18 years. They couldn't have children of their own, but they poured their love into their community, donating over $100,000 annually to local charities. David worked as an architect, designing custom homes for Denver's upper class. Together, they were the picture-perfect American success story. That's why what happened on October 15, 2004, seemed so impossible. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got more shocking true crime cases coming your way every week. And stick around until the end, because the truth about what really happened to Margaret Chen will blow your mind. Margaret's morning started like any other. She had her usual coffee, black, 2 sugars, while reading the Denver Post business section. She kissed David goodbye at exactly 7:30 a.m., just like she had every weekday for the past 18 years. Her assistant, Linda Rodriguez, confirmed that Margaret arrived at her office at 8:15 a.m., impeccably dressed in a navy blue business suit. She seemed completely normal. Linda would later tell investigators, maybe a little excited about something, but Margaret was always optimistic. That was just her personality. Margaret spent the morning reviewing client files and preparing for what she told Linda was a very important meeting at 2 p.m. She didn't specify who the meeting was with, which was unusual for Margaret. She was typically very organized about her schedule. At 1:45 p.m., Margaret gathered a leather briefcase, told Linda she might not be back that afternoon, and walked out of her office. Linda watched her get into her Mercedes and drive away. Margaret Chen was never seen again. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Client. When Margaret didn't come home that night, David wasn't immediately concerned. She occasionally worked late or attended business dinners. But when she didn't answer her cell phone, something Margaret never did, David knew something was wrong. By 10 p.m., David was calling hospitals. By midnight, he was filing a missing person report with the Denver Police Department. Detective Sarah Morrison was assigned to the case, and what she discovered in the first 48 hours would haunt her for years. Margaret's Mercedes was found abandoned in the parking lot of a King Soopers grocery store in Aurora, about 25 miles from her office. The car was unlocked, keys still in the ignition. Her purse was on the passenger seat, containing her wallet with $347 cash and all her credit cards. Her cell phone was in the center console. But here's where it gets strange. The briefcase Margaret had taken from her office was nowhere to be found. Detective Morrison immediately began investigating Margaret's last known activities. What she discovered was troubling. According to Margaret's appointment book, that mysterious 2 p.m. meeting was with someone identified only as J. Williams, Insurance Inquiry. Linda Rodriguez remembered the appointment being made 3 days earlier. A man called, she told Detective Morrison. He said he needed to discuss a very large life insurance policy. Margaret took the call privately in her office, and when she came out, she seemed excited isn't the right word, more like intrigued. The problem? There was no record of any J. Williams in Margaret's client database. No phone number, no address, no previous contact. It was as if this person had materialized out of thin air. Chapter 3. The investigation begins. Detective Morrison's investigation revealed that Margaret Chen lived an almost impossibly clean life. She had no enemies, no financial troubles, no secret affairs or hidden addictions. Her marriage to David was solid. Friends described them as still acting like newlyweds after 18 years. But as Morrison dug deeper, she uncovered something interesting about Margaret's business practices. Margaret specialized in high-value life insurance policies for wealthy clients. She had a reputation for being able to secure coverage for people other agents couldn't help. Clients with complicated medical histories, unusual professions, or complex financial situations. Margaret's business record showed she had recently been working on several multi-million-dollar policies. One client stood out, a policy application for $5.2 million that had been submitted just a week before her disappearance. The applicant's name? Jonathan Williams. Are you starting to see the connection? Keep watching because this story is about to take a turn that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. Morrison immediately tried to track down Jonathan Williams. What she found was a paper trail that led absolutely nowhere. The address on the insurance application was for a vacant lot in Commerce City. The phone number was disconnected. The social security number belonged to a man who had died in 1987. Jonathan Williams, whoever he was, had created an elaborate false identity for the sole purpose of contacting Margaret Chen. But why? That was the question that kept Detective Morrison awake at night. Chapter 4. The search intensifies. As days turned into weeks, the search for Margaret Chen became one of the largest missing person investigations in Colorado history. The FBI was called in when investigators suspected the case might involve interstate transportation. Search teams combed through the Rocky Mountains, following up on dozens of tips and potential sightings. David Chen was beside himself. He hired private investigators, offered a $50,000 reward for information, and appeared on every local news program begging for help finding his wife. The community rallied around him. Hundreds of volunteers joined search efforts, and Margaret's photo was plastered on billboards throughout the Denver metro area. But as the investigation continued, Detective Morrison began to uncover troubling inconsistencies in the mysterious Jonathan Williams case. The insurance application Williams had submitted was incredibly detailed and professionally prepared. This wasn't the work of some random criminal. It showed intimate knowledge of the insurance industry and Margaret's specific business practices. Williams had known exactly how to approach Margaret, what to say to pique her interest, and how to get her to agree to a face-to-face meeting. Morrison realized they weren't dealing with a crime of opportunity. This was carefully planned, meticulously executed, and carried out by someone who knew Margaret Chen very, very well. Chapter 5. The first breakthrough. 3 months into the investigation, Detective Morrison got her first real break. A forensic accountant reviewing Margaret's business records discovered something that had been overlooked. A series of wire transfers from Margaret's business account totaling $127,000 made over the previous 6 months. The transfers had been sent to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. What made this discovery even more significant was that the transfers had been authorized using Margaret's digital signature, but they occurred on dates when Linda Rodriguez swore Margaret was out of the office. Morrison immediately suspected that someone had been using Margaret's computer and financial access to steal from her business. But when she tried to trace the offshore account, she hit another dead end. The account had been closed just 2 days after Margaret's disappearance, and all funds had been transferred to another untraceable account. The investigation had uncovered embezzlement, but Morrison still couldn't connect it directly to Margaret's disappearance. Was Margaret killed because she discovered someone was stealing from her, or was she somehow involved in the scheme herself? Chapter 6. A shocking discovery. The case took a dramatic turn in February 2005, 4 months after Margaret's disappearance. A hiker in Rocky Mountain National Park discovered what appeared to be burned personal belongings in a remote area near Trail Ridge Road. Among the items was a partially burned briefcase that David Chen positively identified as belonging to his wife. Inside the damaged briefcase, investigators found the remains of insurance documents, including what appeared to be the $5.2 million policy application for Jonathan Williams. But there was something else. A half-burned letter written in Margaret's handwriting. The legible portions of the letter were shocking. "I know this is wrong, but I can't live this lie anymore. The money was supposed to be temporary, Never meant for anyone to get hurt. By the time you read this, the letter appeared to be a confession, suggesting that Margaret had been involved in some kind of fraud or deception. But the most damaging portions had been destroyed by the fire, leaving more questions than answers. I need you to pay attention to what I'm about to tell you next, because this is where the story gets really crazy. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because what comes next will change everything you think you know about this case. Chapter 7. The Insurance Fraud Theory. Based on the partial letter and the financial irregularities, the FBI developed a new theory. Margaret Chen hadn't been kidnapped. She had been running an elaborate insurance fraud scheme and had disappeared when she realized she was about to be caught. The theory went like this. Margaret had been creating fake insurance policies for non-existent clients, collecting premiums, and keeping the money for herself. Jonathan Williams wasn't a kidnapper. He was a fictitious identity Margaret had created to cover her tracks. The mysterious meeting on October 15th was Margaret staging her own disappearance. This theory explained several puzzling aspects of the case. Why Margaret had seemed excited about the meeting, how Jonathan Williams knew so much about the insurance business, why the briefcase had been burned to destroy evidence, the wire transfers to offshore accounts. FBI agent Michael Torres, who took over the case, was convinced they were dealing with a sophisticated fraud scheme. Margaret Chen was a smart woman who knew how to work the system, he told the media. We believe she realized her scheme was about to be exposed and decided to disappear with the stolen money. But David Chen refused to believe his wife was capable of such deception. You didn't know Margaret like I did, he said in a tearful television interview. She was the most honest person I've ever met. Something happened to her. She didn't just run away. Chapter 8. The Cold Case. By 2006, with no new leads and no trace of Margaret Chen, the case was officially designated as cold. Agent Torres remained convinced that Margaret had staged her own disappearance and was living somewhere under a new identity. David Chen continued to maintain his wife's innocence and kept the case in the public eye through annual press conferences and social media campaigns. Years passed. David never remarried, never stopped looking for his wife. He kept Margaret's office exactly as she left it, paid private investigators to follow up on tips, and offered increasingly large rewards for information. The case became something of a local legend in Denver. True crime podcasters and amateur investigators regularly revisited the story, proposing new theories and debating whether Margaret was a victim or a perpetrator. But as the years went by, interest in the case gradually faded. Margaret Chen became just another name on a list of unsolved disappearances. That changed in 2019, 15 years after Margaret's disappearance, when construction workers in downtown Denver made a discovery that would crack the case wide open. Chapter 9. The Basement Discovery. In March 2019, workers renovating an old office building on 17th Street discovered something horrifying in the basement. Behind a false wall, they found the skeletal remains of two people, an adult female and an adult male. The female remains were quickly identified through dental records as Margaret Chen. The male remains were more problematic. The victim had been a John Doe with no identification. But here's what investigators found with the bodies that changed everything. Margaret's jewelry, including her wedding ring and a distinctive sapphire necklace David had given her for their 15th anniversary. More importantly, they found her briefcase, the real briefcase, not the burned decoy that had been found in the mountains. Inside the briefcase were documents that painted a completely different picture of what had happened on October 15, 2004. Chapter 10. The Real Jonathan Williams. The documents in Margaret's briefcase revealed the shocking truth about Jonathan Williams. He wasn't a fictitious identity created by Margaret. He was a real person named Jonathan Williams Kowalski, a former insurance investigator from Chicago, who had been running a complex fraud scheme targeting wealthy insurance agents across the Midwest. Kowalski's method was sophisticated and cruel. He would research successful insurance agents, create elaborate fake identities, and approach them with the promise of huge commissions on multi-million-dollar policies. When the agents agreed to meet, Kowalski would kill them and steal their client lists, business contacts, and financial information. Margaret Chen was Kowalski's seventh victim. Police investigation revealed that Kowalski had been operating his scheme since 2001. His previous victims included insurance agents in Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska. In each case, the agent had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and authorities had suspected the victims of staging their own disappearances to cover up financial crimes. Kowalski was a master manipulator who understood exactly how to make his victims look guilty while covering his own tracks. This is the moment that everything we thought we knew about this case got turned upside down. Keep watching, because I'm about to tell you how investigators finally caught this monster. Chapter 11. The final piece. The male remains found with Margaret were identified through DNA analysis as Jonathan Williams Kowalski himself. But how had he ended up dead in the same basement where he had apparently killed Margaret? The answer came from a detailed journal found in Kowalski's apartment, which police had located through a paper trail in Margaret's briefcase. In his own handwriting, Kowalski had documented his entire scheme, including his plan to kill Margaret Chen and assume her identity to access her client list and financial accounts. But something had gone wrong. According to his journal entries, Kowalski had underestimated Margaret Chen. When he revealed his true intentions during their meeting in that basement office building, Margaret had fought back. The struggle had been violent and prolonged. Margaret had managed to seriously wound Kowalski before he killed her, and he had died from blood loss shortly after. The final entry in Kowalski's journal, written in increasingly shaky handwriting, read, "She was stronger than the others, fought like hell. Think I'm bleeding out. Should have been more careful, this wasn't supposed to happen. Going to die in this basement with her." Chapter 12. Justice and Vindication. The discovery of Margaret Chen's remains and the truth about Jonathan Williams Kowalski vindicated David Chen and shattered the FBI's insurance fraud theory. Margaret had been an innocent victim, not a criminal mastermind. FBI agent Torres, now retired, publicly apologized to David Chen. "We got it wrong," he admitted. "We let our assumptions about financial irregularities cloud our judgment about what really happened to Margaret. She was a victim, and we should have recognized that from the beginning." Detective Sarah Morrison, who had never fully bought into the fraud theory, felt vindicated but also heartbroken. "I always believed something terrible had happened to Margaret," she said. "I just wish we could have found the truth sooner." The financial irregularities that had seemed to implicate Margaret were explained by Kowalski's activities. He had been electronically accessing her accounts for months before the murder, stealing money to fund his elaborate schemes, while setting up Margaret to take the blame. Chapter 13. The other victims. With Kowalski identified, police departments across the Midwest reopened cold cases involving missing insurance agents. DNA evidence and documents from Kowalski's apartment led to the discovery of 3 more victims who had been buried in remote locations. Each case followed the same pattern. Successful insurance agents contacted by a mysterious client offering a large policy, followed by disappearances that authorities had attributed to insurance fraud. Kowalski had been operating his scheme for nearly 4 years before Margaret Chen fought back hard enough to kill him. The families of Kowalski's other victims finally got the closure they had been seeking for years. Like David Chen, they had never believed their loved ones were criminals, and they had endured years of speculation and suspicion. If this story has shocked you as much as it shocked me, please hit that like button and share this video. These families deserve to have their loved ones remembered as the victims they were, not the criminals they were made out to be. Chapter 14. David's closure. For David Chen, the discovery of his wife's remains brought a mixture of relief and renewed grief. He had spent 15 years not knowing whether Margaret was dead or alive, whether she was an innocent victim or a criminal on the run. "I never doubted Margaret for a second," he said at her memorial service in 2019. "She was the most honest, loving person I've ever known. I just wish she could have made it home to me that night." David finally got the chance to give his wife a proper funeral. Margaret was buried in Denver's Riverside Cemetery, with hundreds of friends, former clients, and community members attending to pay their respects to a woman whose reputation had been unfairly tarnished for 15 years. The inscription on Margaret's headstone reads, "Beloved wife, successful businesswoman, innocent victim. She fought until the end." Chapter 15. Lessons learned. The Margaret Chen case changed how law enforcement approaches missing person investigations involving successful business people. The assumption that financial irregularities automatically indicate guilt led investigators down the wrong path for years, while the real truth lay hidden in a basement. Detective Morrison, now a police captain, uses the case as a training example for new investigators. "Never let assumptions drive your investigation," she tells them. "Follow the evidence, not your theories about what might have happened." The case also highlighted the sophisticated methods used by predators who target successful professionals. Kowalski's scheme was elaborate and convincing, designed to make his victims look guilty of the very crimes he was committing. Today, insurance industry organizations use Margaret's case as an example of why agents should be cautious about meeting unknown clients in isolated locations. New protocols have been established to verify client identities and ensure agent safety. Epilogue. Remembering Margaret. 20 years after that October day when Margaret Chen left her office for what she thought was a routine business meeting, her story serves as a reminder that evil can disguise itself behind professional facades and elaborate schemes. Margaret Chen was a successful businesswoman who built her wealth through hard work and genuine care for her clients. She was a loving wife who supported her community and lived her life with integrity. She was also a fighter who, in her final moments, managed to ensure that her killer would never hurt anyone else. The truth about Margaret Chen's disappearance was indeed shocking, not because she was guilty of the crime she was accused of, but because she was so completely innocent. For 15 years, her memory was tainted by suspicion and speculation. But in the end, the truth prevailed, and Margaret Chen was remembered not as a criminal who faked her own death, but as a victim who fought back against evil and won. David Chen continues to live in their family home in Cherry Hills Village. He has established the Margaret Chen Foundation, which provides safety training and support for insurance agents and other professionals who work with unknown clients. He never remarried, saying that Margaret was the love of his life and no one could ever replace her. Every October 15th, on the anniversary of Margaret's last day, David visits her grave and tells her about his year, about the foundation's work, and about how much he still misses her. "I always end by telling her how proud I am that she fought back," he says. "She saved other people's lives by stopping that monster even though it cost her everything." If Margaret's story has touched you, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We bring you real stories about real people who deserve to be remembered. Share this video to help ensure that Margaret Chen's memory lives on not as a suspected criminal, but as the hero she really was. The truth about Margaret Chen's disappearance was shocking, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Sometimes the most shocking truth is that an innocent person really was just that, innocent.